Hello and welcome back to my shop. In this series of videos, I'm going to have a little fun. I'm going to turn a pen topper. Now what a pen topper is instead of having a clip and a cap on your pen, the top of the pen will be completely enclosed in wood. Here's an example of what I'm going to be turning today. The top of this pen is made to look like the king from a chessboard. Now with the grabber mandrel that I used to turn this particular king topper, you can pretty well turn any shape that you can imagine. You could make it a baseball bat, you could make it a flying saucer, whatever you can imagine you can turn for the top of your ink pen. In this video, I'm going to turn both a king pen topper as well as a queen pen topper. Now I have some photographs of the queen pen topper because I made that for the daughter of a good friend of mine, Walter, and that has already been shipped, but I did take a couple of photos before I sent it. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. The first thing we want to do before we start making our chess pins is we want to define our pattern. Now these are a couple of chess pieces that I had laying around, and I chose them because they were simple and I liked the design. The next thing we want to do is define the stock that we're going to use to turn these pins out of. Now I have a beautiful piece of spalted maple here, and all we need to do is get this down to the proper size for turning. I think the best way to start is probably to take the base of one of these chess pieces and measure it. And it looks like, I hope you can read that, we're just shy of 7/8 of an inch. So that gives us a good basis for how we want to cut our stock. I'm going to start off by taking a good look at my blank, all the sides, and I'm going to try to pick what I think is going to be the most striking side to make my pen from. And I believe right here is probably the prettiest side of this blank. So I'm going to put this against my fence, and I'm going to raise my blade about halfway, maybe a little over half. Before we get started, there is one measurement that we have to pay close attention to. You'll remember the bottom of the chess piece was roughly 7/8 of an inch wide. What I've done is I've preset my fence here to about an inch away from the blade. It's going to give me just a little extra fat to play with in case I don't hit the exact center of my blank whenever I drill it for the brass tube. Now that we have our blank cut, it's time to size it to the proper length. Let's get our blanks measured to the proper length. Now I'm going to start with the queen. I'm going to layer on the blank, and you'll notice I leave about 1/2 of an inch at the end of the blank. And I'll show you why I'm doing that. Even though I'm going to be turning with the grabber mandrel, I'm going to pull the tailstock up and use the tailstock to help steady the piece of wood to avoid any excess vibration. So let's put the queen back on the blank. And there's no science to this. I just leave a little at the front, leave a little fat at the back end. Then I'm going to take my brass tube, which this will be the front half of the pen, and you see I leave a little bit of the area in front of the tube and behind the tube. And we're going to repeat the process with the king. Once again, I'd rather have just a tiny bit too much wood than not enough. Now what I want to do is make sure I keep my blanks separate so there's no confusion. I'm going to put a Q on both sides of this blank. a K on both sides of this blank. And I'm going to put a T up here to let me know that's the top of the pen. And where I drew my line down the center, I'm going to go ahead and draw a perpendicular line so that I can line the grains back up as best as possible when I'm finished turning the pen. I'm going to take these two blanks over to a miter saw. It's a manual miter saw, and I'm going to use that because the blade is nice and thin, and I'll be able to get a nice thin cut so that I don't waste a lot of wood. It'll also help the grain to line back up a little bit better when I'm finished. So I'm going to go do that, and when I return, we'll talk about the next step.